every Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. CST, live on Facebook and YouTube. Join us as we discuss pertinent issues that relates to you and I with your host, Alinka.
Very talented young people who have decided to follow.
Then another year it starts again. Well, this is different.
We should definitely be talking to those wonderful people. Once again, we urge you to share the feed on Facebook.
Hi there, I'm Faida, and today we're going to be talking about the African diaspora in Mexico.
Whether UK likes it or not, I have to leave this country.
I became a member and a chief of the Vice Lord all in one day.
All these guys wins right out of the north at Midway Airport.
His father.
Rice and beans. Okay, kids, we have had to come to an end of this beautiful set. Welcome, everyone. This is the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. Today is April 25th, 2023. It's Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, and we are here to serve you as a community building show. This evening, we have great guests among us, as usual, to engage in a very important conversation. If you are on Facebook, please share it now so your friends and our friends can partake in this community building conversation. Also on YouTube, you can like the channel, subscribe to it, turn on the notification so that when we come here every Tuesday from 6 to 8, you can be part of this important dialogues. We are also here every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. Central. This show is being live right now, as I said, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. After a show, you can listen to our past episodes on Spotify. Actually, if you have Spotify, you can subscribe to it, and then type the Progressive Mind Show. You would find most of our episodes since we started in 2017, so you can get to see what the show has been about and our determination to engage and make our communities better. But for now, we will go to our guests who have joined us this evening. My co-host is also here. Chanel just joined us. Chanel, thankfully you made it. I know that there was a little glitch earlier. So Chanel, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to hear from all of the amazing guests that we have on the show today.
Absolutely. So we would okay, Vicky made it. Vicky, you made it, and I'm glad that is the case. We have DaQUan here. Okay, so let's start with the our guest this evening. And all right, so we do have Sheldon Williams. He is a visionary futurist who is dedicated to creating a better world for all humanity. He has over 20 years of service in the United States Coast Guard as a chief warrant officer. Among his credentials, he's also the founder of an NGO called EDFU, EDFU, which we'll be talking about in a little bit to get to know a little bit more about it and how it connects to the conversation we're about to have today. He's also the co-chair of the International Working Group for the United Nations Permanent Forum, among other accolades. And because of time, we will go to our next guest to introduce SHERLY FABRE. Before we go before we do that, Sheldon Williams, thank you so much for joining the show. We appreciate your presence here.
Thank you for having me, Senna. I appreciate being here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And then we have SHERLY FABRE, who is the International Civil Society Working Group of the Permanent Forum. She's also part of the International Civil Society Working Group of the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. SHERLY FABRE is an activist with a background in international political, economic conflict resolution, interfaith dialogue, and communications. She is a representative to the United Nations for International Fellowship of Reconciliation. She's also part of the communication team for the International Civil Society Working Group for the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. SHERLY, again, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And next to her is the lady who made all of this happen, Dr. Vicky Casanova. She is Dr. Vicky Casanova Willis is also part of the team, and we're going to be knowing a little bit more about her role. She is the ambassador. Let me go take this back again. Hold on 1 second. My computer just froze. In the past, she has worked as a human rights activist with a network, with various networks. She is also a senior fellow of the office. She is currently a senior fellow of the Office of HBCU Development and International Cooperation, while volunteering as a co-lead of the International Civil Society Working Group of the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. Vicky, once again, thank you so much for making the show.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And lastly, we have DaQUAN, who is also joining us for the first time. He is a Pan-African egalitarian, a humanitarian, human rights activist, and international affairs young professional. Due to his background in New York City foster homes with his orphanage teenage mother and experience in urban poverty, Lawrence has dedicated his life to serving and advocating for marginalized individuals. He's also a co-founder of Strong Men Overcoming Obstacles Through Hard Work, an organization called Smooth Incorporation. It's a community service kind of organization that mentors and looks for the development for Black males in Baltimore and Philadelphia. He holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and is also working on working on a master's of international public relations, public policy from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced Johns Hopkins University. He's working on his master's degree in international public policy. Again, the accolades are many, so pardon me if I did not go through them accurately. My brother DaQUAN, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so we'll jump right into it. Looks like we're having a little glitch with Chanel's feed. Once it comes, we would get to Chanel. But when we posted this flyer, Vicky, when we were having this conversation, we've talked at length about the the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, and a lot of people ask me, "What is that? What is that?" So I would like to hear from the horse's own mouth, Dr. Vicky Casanova Willis. Again, let me know what you prefer to go by, either Vicky or Dr. Willis or Dr. Casanova. Just give me a preference and we'll stick with it, okay?
Absolutely. Vicky is fine.
All right.
And I wanted to echo the thanks that you just heard from each of my colleagues. First and foremost, Senna, it's so important for for these conversations, for these discussions, so that we can raise awareness and ensure that people, in fact, many people may be aware already of the human rights framework and how it's not just something that happens in Geneva, Switzerland, right? It literally is something that is a living, breathing human rights mechanism. I call it the matrix. There are so many specific ways to ensure that we are applying human rights, which include civil rights, but they're much, much, much bigger. It's also economic, social, cultural, political, environmental, like they're sexual. There's a whole world of issues and opportunity areas that, and particularly when they affect your people, right? I am a person of African ancestry. Although I was born here in the US, I still am connected to other people of African descent or African ancestry. So I just thank you. Black media is so important because many people don't, as you know, as we all know, don't really want to hear or to have other people hear our stories. And for us to be able to connect together and help uplift this UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, which is the first the first of its kind, advocated for many, many years, using that human rights advocacy and action process. And so you're going to hear from each of us what we do as members of, this international civil society working group. And, for those who don't know, civil society just means the people, right? As opposed to the governments that are member states of the United Nations. Again, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to let you know what is happening with this UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. What is coming up very quickly, the second session at the end of May, May 30th through June 2nd in New York City, where one of the other major UN locations is, and how this international civil society working group, and we are several hundred people strong already, just since the launch back in December of 2022, how we pull alongside and do the work to help ensure that this permanent forum is as effective and as efficient and as supported as it deserves to be, and as we all deserve.
Awesome.
So I'll pause there. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Chanel, thank goodness you made it. It was a little glitch over there, but I know your feed is loud and is clear, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear, because I can hear everybody else. Can you hear me, Chanel?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, so I think our guest, already Vicky just gave us a good intro, or I'll say window to what this organization is about and what they do. And in a little bit, we'll get to know more. But go ahead, Chanel, if you have any opening in terms of what you make of this whole organization and the team that is here working to advocate for Black people at the United Nations.
I'm just so thoroughly excited. What's going on? I'm so thoroughly excited to be here in this place and time, because these are the kind of conversations that I think are so important. I'm a media person. I have an organization, a media company called the Diaspora News Network. And one of the shows that I produce, I travel throughout the continent of Africa to bring light to some of the amazing issues happening on the continent. But really the goal is to bridge a connect between African Americans and African people, and really Africans throughout the entire diaspora. So just to hear that there is an organization like yours committed to amplifying the voices of African American people at the United Nations as a diasporan, I think that that's just amazing. I'm so excited to hear more about some of the things that you're championing and what we can do here in the US and abroad to support the work that you're already doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sheldon, let me go to you, and I'll come to SHERLY in a little bit. Before you join PFPAD, your work, your bio part of your bio speaks volumes of the work you've done and who you are. But maybe a little insight to, what we couldn't get out, and then how you heard about PFPAD and why you decided to join them.
Yeah, thanks, Senna. Yeah, I mean, since I was a little kid, I mean, my mom had me involved in like the NAACP since I was at least 7 years old. I grew up in New York, so I was always involved in activism. And so it's always been a major part of my life. I had to grow up, your parents or my parents and family encouraged me to read books like Blood in Your Eye, Autobiography of Malcolm X, Wretched of the Earth, Things Fall Apart. So I've always had that sense of giving back to our community within me. And that's one of the guiding principles of our charter for the working group is Pan-Africanism, which encourages the strengthening of bonds between all people, indigenous on the continent and throughout the diaspora. So I hope that gives you a little insight into who I am as a person and what it is that I try to do and put across in the work that we do here.
Exactly. And in a nutshell, what does EDFU Foundation literally stand for?
Yeah, EDFU is the Temple of Horus in Egypt. EDFU, so I actually started this with a brother of mine who lives in England, Seth Mills. He's from Ghana, and we wanted to do something for children. And what better child to personify than Horus, right? So the hero. So we chose EDFU as the name of our organization, and we've been dedicated to uplifting women and children since 1999.
And so, thank you. That speaks volumes, brother. Since 1999, that's a long time, and it's good that you had that type of background because can you imagine if your parents, like you said, did not encourage you to read? When you said Things Fall Apart, that's a typical African book, right? And you hardly hear anybody in the diaspora mention Things Fall Apart. One of the famous books that was written by an African, Nigerian to be specific, that Africans have read. Because the reason why this is important is that in Africa, we don't tend to read a lot of books written by African scholars. Most of the textbooks we read, especially in high school and colleges and universities, are written by Europeans. And in fact, a lot of times, the more European the name is, the more emphasis or the more importance that we place on that book, because hey, this one, Macbeth wrote it. I read Macbeth. And I didn't know who I had no idea who Macbeth was, but I was reading his books. So your background is solid, and we would encourage. This is what we would encourage a lot of people in the diaspora to do with their children. Now, having said that, when did you meet? How did you come? How did your path cross PFPAD?
Yeah, so as I said, I've been working since 1999 with EDFU, and when I first got into United Nations was due to growing up in New York, Malcolm X was a big hero, and he always encouraged us to go to the United Nations for human rights rather than civil rights. So when we started EDFU Foundation, going to the United Nations was something that we definitely wanted to do. At that time, there was no permanent forum for people of African descent. Being that I do have indigenous heritage and I consider Black people indigenous no matter where they are on the planet, I started working in that realm. And so I went to several mechanisms that deal with indigenous people. And there I met a brother by the name of Michael McKeitron. Fast forward a few years later, Michael McKeitron reached out to me, as well as Solomon Ballette from who are now parts of the working group. Michael is now a member of the Permanent Forum, and they were saying that they were trying to get this resolution passed and invited me to come and join in this work. And so that's what I did. And then we put our feet to the ground and we grinded it out with many other people, and we stood on the shoulders of giants who came before us. And that's how I got involved. And fortunately, the ancestors shined on us. And in 2021, the resolution was passed, and the forum kicked off in December of 2022. So yeah.
Okay, you said the resolution was passed in 2021
in August August 2021. Yeah.
Okay, so the significance of that resolution and the people that pushed it and why they pushed it is what I want Vicky to respond to. But I know later, Vicky, I would like you to come in and respond to that. But I know Chanel has a question.
You know what? And my internet is acting a bit spotty today, so I hope that like I said, I'm so interested to know more about what are some of the points that you all are advocating for there in the UN. And I'm just really interested to know as well, like in places like Ghana, and I've been to Ghana more times than any other country, you know, there was this whole year of the return. And then I know that there's legislation there to grant African Americans land. I'm just wondering, what are some of the, legislations, points that you're advocating for on behalf of African people throughout the diaspora?
Well, I think we'll have, I'll have Shirley respond to that, if you may. If Shirley's not ready, we'll just have Vicky do it.
Okay. Well, I think like more than one of us should answer that question. So I will say that I am actually from Haiti. And so one of the things that I definitely want to advocate for is the situation in Haiti, and for people to kind of understand what's going on there and how it interconnects, right? Because I think a lot of times what Empire does best is like to separate us, and we need to understand that a lot of the tools that are used in one place are used in the other. So to be able to talk about that, and to be able, and also I want to talk about reparations, because I've worked on different reparations campaigns here in the United States, but also like reparations for different peoples of African descent. So that's what I'm gonna, hope to talk about and work on, and I'll pass it on to Dr. Vicky.
Yes, you're right. I think being a Haitian American, it will be it will be unfair to Haiti if you start advocating for land for Black people in Ghana, right? So no, thank you. Now I was just joking, but thank you for that response, Vicky. I think that was a direct question to you.
Yes, it was. And I'm also going to encourage, again, I think you're right, Shirley, that, for DaQUAN, Sheldon, please, of course, feel free to jump in as well. And I think the best answer to your question is that the whole idea of International Civil Society Working Group, and in fact, civil society engaging in human rights anyway, is that right to self-determination, the right and opportunity and obligation to tell your own story. So it's not even, oh, what is this working group, or what's Vicky or someone else uplifting and advocating for on my behalf. It's the beauty of you all inviting us to be able to share today about the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, about the International Working Group, volunteers that are simply, some are very new to the human rights framework. This may be the very first time that they started getting involved, but they've been doing work in their own communities, in their own lives, as you've heard. Each of these folks have been. And we're finding more and more commonality and applicability with our brothers and sisters, with everyone, gender nonconforming folks, just people all over the world. So one thing that's important to note before we leave today, we want to make sure that everyone knows that they can literally just go online, Google African Permanent Forum. If you don't remember the acronym UNPFAD or PFPAD, the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. But if you just Google African Permanent Forum, you will see on the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, right, the OHCHR UN website, you will see all of the records and the recordings and the written statements that were submitted, the recommendations from people throughout the world, people of African ancestry and our allies. And that was, again, for the launch in December of 2022, which, Sheldon was quite modest. he made it sound really easy that advocacy, of which he was a big part, several of us were for some time, but toward the very end, these are debates, if you can imagine, on the floor of the UN with the member states. Flat out, honestly, they're member states and members of the UN, but they were colonizing countries, right? Colonizing forces around the world. In some cases now, very much still neo-colonial holds on people not just of African ancestry, but and that's also an important thing. So I'll try to make this answer a little bit more succinct, but we want people to know about this and as much as we can share in the time that we have on your program tonight, but also to know where they can literally go to get this information themselves. Okay. What I would also say is on that Permanent Forum website, and you can also, we're curating a lot of this work within the International Civil Society Working Group. That's our whole purpose, as we said at the beginning, is to increase awareness and to engage, folks however much or little they want to, remotely, hybrid. They can get on the plane and come to New York, at the end of May through June 2nd. But there's guidance posted on the second session. That's what this is, that's upcoming. Okay. That outlines what the themes will be. One of them is reparatory justice. So it ties in exactly to your question, my sister. Yeah, Sheldon?
But I don't want to go if Cinna was going to say something, but I was going to kind of wrap up what you were saying and kind of help you with that point, Vicky. But first I'll say is it's important as African people to stay in our spiritual center and look forward, because as Vicky said, this was definitely a debate. She was there when we were advocating and lobbying member states to support this resolution. But since we're here and we have this forum that is for us and by us, the mandate of what the working group does is to ensure the continued success of the Permanent Forum and make sure that it perpetually reflects the vision and will of people of African descent. So whereas the recommendations that are coming up that you'll see on the, as Vicky said, on the website for the second session, most of the agenda is what civil society put forth as what they would like to see as the themes. And we were able to help facilitate that with our fearless leader, Dr. Amara Inya and Dr. Shauna Cox. I just want to mention them as well as my other two co-chairs. But yeah, that's basically those themes. Reparatory justice, which the young lady mentioned earlier, that is something that is definitely talked about at these sessions, because we feel that it doesn't just mean money, and it definitely doesn't just mean land. It means not repeating the harm and not having hucksters and snake oil salesmen come and tell you to get a reparations payout when this is something that is for the global, that needs to be done for the global community, because empirism, as Vicky said, has taken place everywhere. And so reparations is going to look a little bit different everywhere. We also concerned with data, the disaggregation of data, women's health, maternal morbidity is a definite issue. And there's several other issues, which, like as Vicky said, if you go to the website, you could definitely see those there.
All right. Thank you so much, Sheldon. DaQuan, your background is powerful. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, but you have braced through the challenges that you faced, unlike others who have not been able to, come through those challenges. And you were currently working on your master's, which is very impressive at Johns Hopkins. How did you run into this organization?
Thank you, Sina. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you once again for the platform, and thank you to all of my colleagues that I'm working with in the civil society working group. Just a small correction. So I went to Johns Hopkins to study international relations economics because I'm interested in human rights and because of my background in foster care. But I'm currently at Howard University completing my doctorate in African studies. So that's kind of how I got affiliated with the working group. 1 second, baby. You have to be quiet. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, baby. 1 second. I'm sorry. I see you finish eating. Sorry, I had to do that.
I know, it's okay.
Real life, baby. Real life.
Long story short, as you see, I have real things to do. Yeah, I'm here because of, as you said, Sina. So it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm here because of the village that put into me.
Okay, you tend to her. We'll come back to you. Okay, tend to her. We'll come back to you. So no, that he has a powerful story, and I know. And when he comes back, I'd like him to share a bit more of it. So what I wanted to ask, Shirley or Vicky earlier is, I want to make a very clear distinction between the United Nations Permanent Forum and the International Civil Society Working Group. Okay. Firstly, we know there are resolutions, several of them are the UN. And I think that for somebody who's first time listening, hearing this work and what you're doing, we would like to know first, who came up with the bill or the resolution, who are the people that sponsored it and got it to the UN. And then, of course, now that it's passed, I want to know how it got to the UN in the first place. Can you give us a little genesis of how all this whole started, Vicky?
I'm going to go way back and say it was actually before this, is my understanding. But if you think about 2001, and the World Conference on Racism, and, it's xenophobia and, all kinds of all forms of intolerance and discrimination. But importantly, out of that forum came the Durban Declaration and Plan of Action. Ultimately, there was a declaration for the very first time, recognition that the transatlantic slave trade, as it was called, the Ma'afa, the Holocaust of African enslavement, as we call it, but that there was a declaration that it was a crime against humanity and always should have been considered as such. There were, just as we're talking about advocating and deliberating within the upcoming Permanent Forum or PFPAD 2 session, at that time, there were recommendations, interventions, they call them, statements and demands. And so a couple of the things that came out of that were this idea that, of course, we need a permanent forum to deal with both redress, but opportunities and collaboration of people of African descent or African ancestry. Of course, there would be a working group of experts on people of African descent. That was one of the things that was ultimately put in place. And so these are mechanisms which have specific mandates, as you know, and specific, areas that they are empowered to analyze, to support, and then to make recommendations, policy recommendations back. It connects with the Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly, which literally changes laws and guidelines, like global policy and practice and theory. This is 20 years later, though, right? You heard Sheldon, one of our co-chairs for the working group, say that this happened in 2021. Again, a lot of this, we know, a lot of the momentum was due to the global outcry, finally, in the wake of the murder of yet another person of African ancestry, in this case, George Floyd, right? So I don't want to diminish the fact that it literally is what we're urging people to do right now, which is to just learn about this, understand how this work intersects with what you're already passionate about, work that you're already doing, and find out how, to learn more, how to create change and how to engage. It was on the books as something to do.
Okay.
And it took serious advocacy and a lot of tremendous sacrifice for it to finally come to being.
Okay. And what is the role? So that, thank you for giving us that brief background. it makes it a little clearer now. So now we have, so this work, this background, and the work that some people did, and a lot of all these advocacies led to the passing of the resolution, which we now call the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. Is that correct? In a nutshell. Okay.
Exactly.
Great.
Let me just say quickly, and then I'm going to pause because we have my colleagues are quite accomplished and very, very esteemed in their own right. You know, with regards to why they're involved in this work and their path into it, and even their involvement with the launch back in December is really, really critical. But I wanted to mention, so for those of us who have been involved in the human rights work, often we have to wait for a treaty, a specific treaty that maybe our nation has ratified, that is a party to. The U.S. has ratified, 3 or 4. So, for example, CERD, the Convention to Eliminate All Forms of Racial Discrimination, or the CAT, the Convention Against Torture, or ICCPR. There's a lot of acronyms, but that's, basically civil and political rights, right? So it encompasses voting rights and things like that. But then you have to wait for the rotation of maybe 3 or 4 years for your country to be reviewed. Maybe they're in Haiti, as Shirley said, of her homeland, reviewing, and we can, we can't wait for 4 years for something to roll around, and that's the idea of a permanent forum.
Got you. And so how long has the International Civil Society Working Group been in existence for?
DaQuan,
yeah, so we.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'll defer to DaQuan since he's back. But real quick, I'll just say that the working group's been in place since before the resolution, and it came about because of the resolution. Because we saw what was going on in terms of being able to get the resolution to happen. We wanted to ensure that it was successful and that it had teeth and could stand on its own. So that's why we came into play to set up to ensure that we would that this would be successful. So DaQuan, go ahead, man. I'll give you a chance.
No, thank you again, Sheldon, and thank you everyone for the platform. I'm just going to speak quickly. Again, I think as I'm the youngest person here, I'm currently at Howard doing my doctorate. As somebody that's originally from Harlem, it's been my life dream to just work with Black people who are dedicated to Black liberation. As my colleagues have mentioned, again, I was born in 90, so I'm really not even supposed to know all of this, but we mentioned individuals like Malcolm X. He and other individuals, including Ella Jo Baker, so many others, women have been the leaders of civil society for centuries before colonization. What the Permanent Forum is doing is addressing the lack of respect and protection of human rights for Black people all around the world. Society started in Africa. Colonialism, racialism, racism, and globalization are the modern current order, which maintain these infringements on human rights. And the last thing I would say is, again, just as far as my involvement, again, it's just a dream come true to be a young Black person advocating on the behalf of all Black people all around the world. And I think, again, it's very important. As you see my daughter here, this is what I'm doing things for. Even though we're not a part of, people who aren't officially a part of the civil society group are still a part of our collective efforts, because, again, we are a grassroots movement. So, again, I think it's very important to understand that the United Nations and other international organizations, they maintain a bureaucratic order that maintains the status quo. So just to unpack that a little bit, the status quo is racialism, the status quo is racism, the status quo is double standards and infringements on human rights. Right now, it's a hot topic to focus on the LGBTQIA community. However, again, women have been oppressed for centuries. So in my mind, again, women should go first. Any other marginalized group should come second. But again, if we're specifically focusing on Black people, as Dr. Vicky said, there is another permanent forum for indigenous peoples, and there's several other groups and institutions around the world that are advocating on behalf of human rights. I would also like to mention the unlawful murder of Breonna Taylor, because I think that it's egregious that people, we skip over Breonna Taylor when we talk about George Floyd, as well as others such as Emmett Till and a long list of individuals who have been unlawfully killed just in America. And if we're going to postulate that and talk about society globally, there's no way to not talk about colonialism. So again, I don't want to go on and on and on, but there's a lot of things that we're doing with the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And there are many reasons and ways that people could get involved. And youth is very important. As you can see, again, like I said, I'm the youngest person and I'm in my 30s. So when we say youth in the African context, in the global context, that means people below 40. And again, I would like to say thank you again to my colleagues for all of the work that they're doing, and the connections and the groundwork that they're laying for individuals like myself who want nothing else but to empower other Black people, to get people to see and respect ourselves, respect each other, our culture, our heritage, and know that we could all make it if we just work together in the spirit of Pan-Africanism.
Brilliant. DaQuan, ultimately, where do you see this landing you? Are you going to become a lawyer or a human rights or civil rights activist? What's the ultimate goal for all of this for you personally?
Oh, Dan, that's a good question. So once upon a time, I did want to be a lawyer, but I think I don't have the heart to be a lawyer. I'm a little too honest, and I have a little bit too much integrity. I was raised by a man that, again, my foster grandfather, who was born, in the 40s and grew up in the 50s and 60s. So for me, honor, respect, and things like that are really important, and I don't believe in double standards. But to answer your question, I don't know. I consider myself a global political scholar activist. I'm at Howard again once I get the PhD. I'm just trying to help people. To me, I want to be a combination of DaQuan Lawrence and, just looking up to people that I'm working with and continuing the work that people like Dr. Rodney did, Dr. Walter Rodney. So there's many lanes, but again, I'm just trying to be myself and to help people. I don't really have I used to want to work for the United Nations, but we'll see. This is working for the United Nations. I'd rather work with people who look like me, who are dedicated to Black liberation, not sit in a seat where I have a bunch of privilege and I understand issues, but I'm not really stopping the machine. I'd rather transform the machine so we could all rebuild, because I believe every person has a soul and every soul has a purpose. So that's just me from my vantage point, from being born in foster care in Harlem. And you see who I'm with, you see who I like to roll with, so that's the company that I keep. I'm always learning. But yeah, it's people, again, who are doing much more than me, who are much younger, who have much more enthusiasm, and they're not as reserved as me. I'm a little bit polished and refined now. So, because again, you see I'm working in this space, but there's a lot of young brothers and sisters who don't, give a FUCK, and I can't, we have to channel that energy as well. So I think that my space will probably be on the ground, but also being, international, working with the youth. So.
Hey, I wanted to ask a quick question, because I think DaQuan brought up a really important thing. He was talking about how the United Nations, perpetuates the colonial, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Perpetuates, the status quo, which is, racialization, the subjugation of people of color, not just Black people, but many, many people. And I'm just wondering, what if any roadblocks have you all had to kind of overcome or continue to strategize in order to be effective in your work, working in a body that has served as an arm of white supremacy?
So I'm just going to jump in here, and I want to shout out to DaQuan. He's one of our shining stars as part of our youth committee, along with Jadea Spencer and Miles Henderson, who are at the UN right now. They'll be doing a forum at the ECOSOC Youth Forum on the 27th in New York. And the Indigenous Forum is going on right now. To answer your question and to one of DaQuan's points about this is a grassroots organization, one of the things that we fought for when we were advocating and lobbying to get the resolution passed was that this was not an ECOSOC labeled forum. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that, certain forums at the United Nations require a certain status for you to even register and to go to, right? So therefore, the doors kind of close to you if you don't have ECOSOC status. You can't get into UNEP, or you can't get into COP27 or the COP or Indigenous Forum, certain the different forums that the movers and shakers are at, or where you can actually get movement on, right? So one of the main things we wanted to do was ensure that this was open to all civil society, all grassroots, and it is. So that we take that as a win and as a success. So Chanel, when you mentioned like what roadblocks, that's one of the roadblocks. I know, like I said, I've been doing this since '99, and been working with the UN since 2012, and my organization, EDFU, we got ECOSOC status in 2018. So before then, we weren't able to go to certain forums and ways. But once we got it, we opened the door to any and all Black people who were interested in going. And my colleagues can attest that anytime that there's a forum or something coming up, I send an email blast out like, hey, who's interested in going to this? Because we need to be at these tables. And a prime example of that.
How many years did it take you to get that status, Sheldon?
I would say realistically, it took us about a good 4 years, as Vicky said, the cycle of going around to, to get that. Yeah. So that's like one of the roadblocks. But fortunately, this forum is not ECOSOC labeled, so any and all can come. The registration link is like, as Vicky said earlier, if you go Google Permanent Forum for people of African descent, you can go there. You'll see the registration link. You create an account, and then you can get to go to it. So, and then I look at it as a place where our people, as DaQuan mentioned, Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X always advocated for us to take our issues to the UN as a human rights issue. And this is a place where we can network and we can collaborate in order to advance our issues. So I also wanted to mention that this is also the decade of people of African descent. We're coming up on this is the last 2 years of it. So it started in 2015. The UN mandated that there would be a international decade of people of African descent. And that was in 2015. It's now 2023, 2021 before we got the forum. It's now 2023. So these are things that we need to avail ourselves to and make sure that we are participating and ensuring our full rights.
Awesome. I know DaQuan's daughter wants to have her take on this conversation as well. So DaQuan, what's her name?
Her name is Destiny. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, welcome. Hey, Destiny. Hello. You want to say hello to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Hello. So you have aunties and uncles. What do you want to say to Uncle Sheldon?
Say thank you for helping Africa.
Thank you for helping Africa.
Awesome. And when you grow up, what do you want to become when you grow up?
A princess.
Princess.
What was that?
You're already a princess.
Okay.
This is why, like your father says, why we do this work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Destiny. We appreciate your comments. I think the UN has heard your voice and they will take it to action. What I want to know from Shirley is, I'm still interested in the composition of the International Civil Society Working Group. When did this group start? Who started it? And who are the leaders? A brief background of this organization, and want to link it to your working relation, your affiliation or your work when it comes to the Forum of People of African Descent.
Sure. So as far as the background of the working group, I think Vicky or Sheldon would be better equipped to answer that question.
Okay.
Because I was actually invited to the working group by Dr. Vicky. We had worked together on something previously, and so and have a good relationship, and she invited me to that.
All right. Good. This is the second time I'm coming to you with the wrong question. The next time
No, but I can answer the second part. I can answer the second part. So how does this attach to my work? So I am part of another organization called the International Fellowship of Reconciliation. And I am a UN representative for them. And the work that I do centers on people of African descent. It centers on Haiti in the Caribbean. And it centers on women. So I work a lot with Black women in Colombia. I actually went in 2019 to a meeting with another organization called WRI, where it's an anti-war movement, but also there's just been a lot of upheaval in Colombia, and a lot of Black women who are advocating for the rights of women and the rights for Black people in Colombia are being targeted or being murdered. So I was already doing some work there, and then I got together with a lot of the women that I met at this forum, and I continue to do work with them. So a lot of and then also I do a lot of work that centers around Black liberation here in the United States. I was a part of an organization. I was on the board of an organization called the Truth Telling Project, which is there to advocate for reparations here in the United States. And as Brother Sheldon said, you know, we want complete reparations. It's not just a matter of getting money, but also, you know, there's the UN has like a declaration on like reparations and repair, and one of them is truth telling, which is why it's called the Truth Telling Project, right? Because we have to be able to tell our own stories. And I know sometimes when you say that, it sounds like something that is kind of like lofty, but it actually is more than that, right? There's more like I would say like meat on the bone about it, because now you see like states like Florida that are trying to take away Black books, that are trying to take away Black history from being taught, right? So the idea that somebody controls your story is really it can control the way that you look at yourself. It controls your outlook. And as a Haitian, I know that firsthand, because a lot of the times when people hear about Haiti, they hear about the poverty and about what's going on now, but they don't hear about how we got here, right? And it wasn't simply because of what Haitians were doing or are doing. And also they don't hear that Haiti was actually like the first country in the world to end end slavery in its country. We were the second independent Black nation, and a lot of countries in Latin America have their independence because of Haiti, right? So people don't hear that. So being able to control your narrative and to be able to control your story is something that's very important. Another aspect of reparations is the right to be able to heal and to be able to like to name like what happened to you, and to have that be respected, but also be heard. Because I think a lot of times when Black people bring up what's happening to them, is just, you know, dismissed, or like, oh, we're just complaining, or we have to like justify and like show proof, right? That this is happening to us. So it's very important that we have a space that we're able to like name the harms that were done, and not just like the harms that, you know, like race, like slavery, but also like all the other harms that came from that. And you know, the microaggressions, like all the things, and to be able to like work on reconciliation. When South Africa had a truth and reconciliation process, I think that was very important and very healing. So anyway, my work has been towards this. So to now join this forum and to be able to do this in a more formal way in the UN is really important to me. And I'm really grateful to Dr. Vicky for inviting me and just creating this community where we're all working together towards a common goal.
So two quick follow-up questions, and brilliant. Thank you so much for that input. No wonder you have been quiet this whole time. You were just, you know, just making sure that, you know, you have all your notes, so that once you get a chance, you just spilled all the nuggets out, and I really appreciate it. Are you bilingual?
I am bilingual. I speak Haitian Creole and I speak English sometimes, and I speak a little bit of French.
Okay. You speak Spanish too?
No, unfortunately.
Okay. The reason why I asked is your extensive work in Colombia and these areas.
Yeah. So through interpreters and through the fact that we both speak English, like there's somebody that speaks English in the group.
Right. So you mentioned reconciliation, reparation. A lot of times people, you don't seem to have a lot of enthusiasm when it comes to people of African descent when reparation is mentioned. It doesn't seem to have a lot of momentum. Why? And then secondly, when you talk about reconciliation, who are the stakeholders here? When you say that, are we talking about African Americans reconciling with white people in America, or what's the variation when you talk about reconciliation? Can you respond to those two questions?
Sure. As far as the momentum question, I think
go ahead.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have a lot of momentum because people tend to. It's really hard to see in this current climate how reparations would come about, like whether it would be accepted or not. I think a lot of times, like a lot of the work is done behind the scenes before it is accepted into mainstream society. People are also scared to like dream. There's so much going on that is scared that maybe it's a little bit scary to like dream of something this big, right? Because you feel like it may not, like you're just struggling for like the basics, that you may not get something like this. But I think we have to, right? I think we have to ask for what we're owed. I think we have to ask for our respect. And I don't think we have to stop at like basics, just getting the basics, right? Because the basics are not what we're owed. We have contributed so much to this world.
If we
right?
say we are old, who are you referring to?
People of African descent.
Awesome. And when you say people of African descent, can you give me a definition of that? Like, who constitutes that? Which communities constitute that?
I mean, Black people. I don't know.
No, I understand. No,
so I think
the reason why I ask is that there are people who don't even understand. I mean, some of these terms and jargons are new to a lot of people, right? Like you said, a lot of times, even especially Africans, you know, when we come here, we just want to find our bread, we get a job. That's our priority. And so now that we're getting into these conversations, a lot of these words may be technical for folks. So I want us to break it down.
Yeah.
For a layman's term.
I will say this. I will say, let's say we were able to get reparations, right? And so the question is like, who gets reparations and how, right? Well, so if you're if you are a Black American and you have, you know, grandparents and great grandparents that were here, that were affected by slavery here, there would be an avenue that you get reparations that way.
Okay.
And then let's say you're a person like me who immigrated to this country,
right?
But I immigrated at it doesn't matter what age you immigrate, but if you had something that happened to you, where there's just no way that you come here and you're not affected by racism, and you're not affected by all the structural racism that keeps you down, or that makes things harder for you. So then you have an avenue to like reparations in that way, and that's for the monetary reparations. But as far as like the rest of it, I think we would all come together as a collective to work on that. Sheldon?
Yeah, Sheldon wants to respond. Does people of African descent include people in Africa or Africans in the
so I think so, Senna. So first of all, we're using colonizing terms, right? So unfortunately, this session is set up in the United Nations. So, you know, we have to use the language of the United Nations when we went to go and get this this resolution passed, right? So like we would say people of African ancestry, right? That's the term that I would imagine DaQUAN, SHERLY, and Vicky all would agree. We prefer to use the term African ancestry, right? But unfortunately, we are within the United Nations, so we're playing by the rules that they have given us in order to do the work that we need to do. Secondly, what I would say is like when it comes to reparations, as I said earlier, is going to look different from where it depends on what region you came from. The only point I would disagree with Shirley on is that no matter where you are affected by structural and systematic racism, and that it's just the varying degree in the form and the way that they put it, right? So like Haiti was paying reparations to France for up until recently, right? Like, and like how does that work, right? You cut down most of the trees in Haiti, and like, how does that work, right? So, you know, we could talk about the war bulls that happened in Africa, right, which allowed people to colonize and all other types of heinous crimes. The doctrine of discovery was just talking about by the Pope, how he's repealing the doctrine of discovery, how it was so wrong. But I didn't hear him mention the war bulls, which is what happened in Africa, right? That's the doctrine of discovery in Africa is called the war bulls. But he didn't recall those though, right? So, so reparations is a worldwide issue for our people, and why it doesn't have momentum in the halls of justice in the UN and places like that is because they know that the bill is so large, right? The bill is really, really large. So one last thing I'll say on this point is that I encourage us all to always reach for the stars, to reach for what we're worth and what we can imagine that we can have, because that's always possible. At one point, they said there would never be a Black president. And now DaQuan's daughter, Destiny, does not know a world without a Black president, right? She will never have that in her mind because she knows it. She knows there's a Black woman vice president, right? So if you put limits on yourself to say we can't, then you won't. right? So you have to be positive and knowing that your ancestors set you on the path to do what is necessary to ensure the future for young children like Dustin.
Thank you. Shirley wants to say something, and then Dr. Vicky, I would like you to give us the background of your organization. Go ahead, Shirley.
Yes. So I just want to say that Sheldon is absolutely correct. And I apologize. I was answering as far as reparations here in the United States, but definitely, I absolutely agree that France owes Haiti reparations, and so does the United States. The United States took a large portion of Haiti's gold reserves that are sitting in Wall Street now. So yeah, for sure.
All right, go ahead, Vicky. Who started the International Civil Society Working Group, and who are your leaders? How many members you have in your group, and whatnot? Go ahead.
Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble.
Please, I don't intend to.
I'm gonna say we have like hundreds of leaders, right?
Okay.
Because we're applying the human rights framework, right? Where and also that it's not an organization per se, but it's a network. It's a working group, right? Gotcha. But we absolutely have people who have taken on a heavier load of the leadership, the shared leadership, and one of them right here with us right now, Sheldon, who actually was one of the first people who pulled together, I think 2 or 3. Dr. Amara Inya, who he mentioned is our chair, who I know you know, and she just couldn't be with us this evening, was double booked. And then 2 co-chairs, Sheldon, who also EDFU serves as our fiscal agent, fiscal sponsor, as such a longstanding and respected nonprofit that's been doing work, feeding people out west for some time. Having that ability to quickly mobilize with just a matter of weeks, honestly. I don't think it was more than a couple months to help organize and coordinate and lift as much support as possible for this launch, the very first Permanent Forum session back in Geneva in December, as we said, December 2022. So I think the kind of quick version, I'm going to really oversimplify it. So anybody that wants to chime in, please do. And I will say DaQUan is a gifted journalist, as well as working on his dissertation, and has written quite a few articles that have been published, and we've seen them report on several of the things that have happened, especially pre-launch and during the launch and going forward. But part of that quick history is that okay, so actually the International Year, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Sheldon. The International Year, along with the Permanent Forum and along with the UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent, these were things that were promised from way back, coming out of the Durban conference back in 2001. So a lot of work, a lot of advocacy to hold people accountable. To our sister co-host point a little bit earlier of like, why work with basically a system that's still rooted in colonialism? Well, it's a function of being in it, but not of it. There are some things that are going to happen, whether we are part of it or not, and how can we affect change if we're not part of something, right? So 2021 finally won through some real stubbornness, and thank you to Sheldon, Dr. Amara, Michael McEachran, and several other people who were real noisy. At that time, I was the executive director of the U.S. Human Rights Network, and in my role in that capacity, I was a part of that advocacy, as well as advocating in the Human Rights Council for a new mechanism to specifically look at anti-Black racism, systemic and structural, in law enforcement. And that goes beyond policing. So 2021 said that by the end of 2022, this will actually be a real thing, this forum, not just on paper. Approaching the end of 2022, that meant they had to identify and have 10 members, 10 people, fulfill the mandate of the person. Worldwide search, I think 5 were appointed or selected, and then elected by the nation states. 5 others came from civil society advocacy and recommendations. They're strong.
Okay.
The website, they're strong, representing the globe.
But
then
I want to go to, because of time, I want to take a quick break. Okay. We'll come back and continue the conversation. But thank you so much for giving me that detailed background. I know there is more to the organization. When we come back, I would like, DaQuan, I want to come to you. But Sheldon, we also, somebody was asking, how are you funded? I mean, how, is it a not-for-profit? How do you get this organization sustained? Because the work you're doing is huge. And so we'd like to know a little bit about it. You're watching the Progressive Mind Show right here in the beautiful city of Chicago. We are talking to a wonderful guest, Sheldon Williams. We have SHERLY FABRE, DaQuan Lawrence, Dr. VICIKE CASANOVA WILLIS. They are representing it's a long name, so I got to take time. The International Civil Society Working Group on the United Nations Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. And we are learning more about this organization. And I know that as time rolls along, we would be hearing more about the work and whatever support that they may need from the community. We'll take short break. When we come back, the conversation continues. Please help share the feed on Facebook, YouTube. We're also on Twitter Live. You can watch the show afterwards on our channels whilst you are there. Subscribe to all our pages, turn on the notifications, and tell our friends about it. This is the only community building platform where we engage and talk about these pertinent issues that are related to us. And this is how we build our communities. Feel free to send your information if you have any project, a product or service that you want to advertise or let the community know. Please feel free to share it with us at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. Again, we shall be right back after this short break.
The Progressive Minds is supported by the United African Organization, presenting citizenship application assistance workshops to assist green card holders to become U.S. citizens. Becoming a citizen is easier than you think, and it protects you and your family. Your voice can be heard through your vote, and becoming a citizen allows you to do that. Ever want someone from your community to represent you? Become a citizen and run for public office. Join Unite Africans as we celebrate the rights and freedoms that come with U.S. citizenship. Ready to take the first step in the natural.
All right. So let me go here, see if we can get back. All right. We're back. We apologize for that glitch. That's why we need your support. The Progressive Mind Show is a 501c, and please go on our websites. We have been encouraging the community to donate to us because we need to upgrade our systems. Okay. Of course, this is our internet. Everything is technical. So there was a need to upgrade systems, internets, computers, high-level functioning softwares to get these programming coming to you smoothly every week. So your assistance to us is very, very, very important. The Progressive Mind Show, if you go on the website, they type in out, it comes up, and you can donate to us. Whatever amount is welcomed. We encourage huge amounts though, because you can write them off. Okay, you can definitely. We're 501c, so please be encouraged, be motivated to support us on our website. We'll go back to our guest this evening to attempt to wrap up the discussion. DaQuan, I think that we wanted to get, I don't know if you still hear us. I know the internet is not stable. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We also want to, before we get to DaQuan, I know I wanted to get a question from you earlier. Let me know if you need me to repeat the question. Okay, so there's some information that has been sent to us. Okay, I wanted to make sure. We had a few comments on our feed, and I'd like to get to those comments, so please bear with me while we get through them. So this one came from Cecile Johnson. It's important that we have a permanent forum for people of African descent because globally we are still experiencing the impact of colonialism. Many of our areas are still not self-determined. Thank you so much. And then this is a comment that came from Cecilia. See if you can pull up another one, but we're freezing, so I'm not able to get to other comments. And if that's a challenge, we'll go to our guests so we can maximize the remaining of the time. In the next 15 minutes, we'll try and wrap up the conversation because this evening, this technical challenge is actually, we're trying to pull through it, but it's getting very challenging. So we'll try and wrap up as soon as we can. DaQuan, you want to go ahead and respond to the question that I asked earlier?
I'm sorry, couldn't we just repeat the question just so I can make sure I'm on point? My fault, brother.
Okay, so I'll repeat the question, but I think something just struck me. You give, of course, you give us your background and now what you're doing. I think one thing I wanted to ask earlier, which is what I want to get out now before I go to that other question, is how challenging has it been, or was it, for a young man growing up in Harlem in foster homes to turn your life around to become who you are and your fathering a beautiful daughter and living an exemplary life? Because a lot of people have been in this situation, or some have not even been in foster homes, but they make excuses. I didn't have a father, my daddy wasn't around, so they end up in the street corners and they make excuses every time. They sag their pants. Now, I'm not knocking anybody, but we have people who have made excuses and have not taken advantage of what is available to them. So tell me so if you don't mind sharing your story, how difficult was it for you to turn your life around, and how, and of course, how that can motivate somebody else who's watching or maybe watching later?
Yeah, no, just really briefly, I don't, just again, understanding the context of the question, I think, as my colleagues have said, I think because of the systems and the conditions that Black people all around the world are born into, it's viewed as a climbing the social mobility or climbing a social economic ladder. But I think I would like to say again, I happened to be born in a place where everybody was pouring into each other, and again, by virtue of me being from Harlem, I was exposed to people like Marcus Garvey, exposed to people like Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, as I mentioned again, the great Ella Jo Baker, who pretty much was one of the backbones of the quote unquote civil rights movement. To get to my story, my mother was an orphan, my father was an orphan. My mother was 16 when she had me, and my father was 15. I had another teenage woman pregnant at the same time. So, I have a lot of siblings on my father's side, but to be brief, I would say again, paying attention to the energy around me. Everybody is put in your life for a reason, and there's no accidents or coincidences. So for me, again, I would just say from a very early age, it was always my goal to help people. And I understood, the things around me. And from having an uncle that got shot in the head, from having another uncle that went to jail, from having, my mother go through different things, her being in the foster home, I aged out of the system with my mother. So the first time I lived with my mom, she was 21, I was 5 years old. And I don't say this, again, it doesn't necessarily make me special per se. This is just my story. I think we all have a story. I'm just somebody who internalized my story. And I'm not, when I walk into rooms, I don't feel bad about what I come from. I don't feel bad that my father was a drug dealer. I don't feel bad that my mother, was on welfare and stuff like that. That to me motivated me. And when I look at, I would say my interest in international public policy came from my experience in American poverty. And again, I'm not the only person that thinks that way. I just happen to, again, as Sheldon said, again, as other people said, when you look at and think about politics, we know that all politics are local. When you go up a little bit higher, you have state politics. When you go up a little bit higher, you have the national politics. When you go up a little bit higher, you see that even in the national politics, there's the international system and international law. And that's what we're focused on. So again, I would say, again, just to inspire other people, I think that's the work that we're all doing. But from my vantage point, I'm one of those people, again, I like to appreciate. When you read my bio, I put that I'm an egalitarian. Egalitarianism is to accept a classless society. So whether one has 3 PhDs, whether one has a billionaire company, that doesn't make you better than another individual. I think that somewhere with, like I said, me being born in 90 and all of the work that other individuals were doing before me, somewhere between the 60s and the 70s, the civil rights movement was converted into a consumer rights movement. I'm not the first person to say that, but we forgot what we were, quote unquote, arguing and marching and rallying for. And we consider liberation movements in Africa, which is what this is an extension of, this global human rights movement and organization that's based on civil society. We're trying to forge bridges and bonds between all of these disparate groups that are, anti-capitalist and, trying to, quote unquote, overcome the machine. So again, I could focus on myself, but again, I think that my story is kind of everybody's story, but that's the way that I like to carry myself. And again, I've always aspired for the top. So me being from New York, to again give you further details, I moved out of New York right before high school. I was considering joining 2 gangs at the time. So again, this is like typical, New York youth, black boy stuff in America. And I didn't because my mother just happened to move. So again, I would say, like most black men, we were saved by the black women around us. And if we listen to the black men around us, again, like Sheldon, like others, that you'll be able to catch jewels and you'll be able to, do more, like yourself, Senator, you'll be able to do more things in the future. Because again, all of us are pouring into the youth in our own way, but for whatever reason, society likes only to hold up one. So it's a Malcolm, it's a Martin, it's a Booker T, it's a W.E. Du Bois, it's a Garvey. But I'm not for binaries. I'm for everybody. I believe, again, I just had the honor of meeting Dr. Julius Garvey. And one of the things that we talk about, I shared it on my Instagram. When you build with Marcus Garvey's son, the conversation is how every black youth has the power of the sun. So that's what we need to be thinking. It's not, it's no more exceptionalism. It's no more talented 10th. No matter where you come from, whether you're from social welfare like me or from the underclass and you're a working poor statistic like me, or whether you're somebody, again, who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, you should be helping black people if you identify as black. That's my.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think we could have done a whole show with just you and forget about Vicky and everybody else.
That's what I called each of these. And you know what? I'm going to just and then I'll pause because I know we're running short on time. But I wanted to say, these are the colleagues that were available on super short notice, and as you hear, not because they didn't have anything else to do, right? It's important that to your earlier question, these are volunteer. We are all volunteering. My job, I do work with the more additional labor of love with the Office of HBCU Development and International Cooperation. So when I'm done with this conversation, I'm literally connecting with folks also to figure out how I'm going to raise money as a senior fellow to help pay for the summer school, international distance learning, so that the students on the continent who want to go to HBCUs can do so virtually, not to the brain drain, stay at home. But we come up with those funds to pay the HBCUs tuition because they deserve to be paid just like, other universities as well. But I wanted to say quickly, every time I heard you say Harlem, it reminded me, DaQuan, that, and please chime in, Sheldon or Shirley, if you want, when this Permanent Forum second session convenes, as we said, it's not in Geneva this time, it's in New York. The dates are officially, and you all will see this when you go online, or if you follow up with us directly. And we hope that many in the audience we know who are listening are fellow members of the working group. But if you are not yet and want to be, the more the merrier. It's open, please do, and you can contact us, and we'll leave the email with our hosts. But I wanted to say we're starting in Harlem, right? How do you come to New York City for the UN Forum, the second session, May 30th through June 2nd, and it happens to be Memorial Day weekend, which is very unfortunate scheduling. Thank you, UN, not really, but the 29th, we will have an opening event literally at the Shabazz Center, which many know was the former Audubon Ballroom. So as we do lift up our ancestors, I want to, I keep seeing the face of and hearing the beautiful voice of another brother who sang his story.
Okay.
Right. Baba Harry Belafonte.
Okay.
Was a leader in the human rights work and who just died. Right.
Yeah.
After almost 100 years.
Yeah. You want to wrap it up for us because of our time.
Starting in Harlem on the 29th, we have you'll see 4 days of morning and afternoon sessions, which is typical and traditional based on the actual agenda and the topics that shared earlier. On the 2nd, we have a closing at the Dwyer Center with Dr. Julius Garvey and others. So we will be connecting not just to talk to the UN, but to connect with each other and continue to build. And we hope that you will stay in touch. And yes, donate. Please also donate and support Progressive Minds and other organizations, Black media that tells these stories and lets us get the word out to you, because you won't hear it on mainstream radio, quote unquote mainstream, or see it in the New York Times. It's not happening.
Thank you so much. We will be the next New York Times in Chicago. No, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate it. Chanel, I don't know if you have any.
It's just been great. First of all, the work that you all are doing is just absolutely amazing. It was wonderful just listening to the passion in DaQuan's voice as he talked about, his childhood, and also spoke on the work that he's doing with the organization. It's just amazing. I'm so inspired, and I am going to do my best to get down there on Memorial Weekend to join you guys. I just think what you all have done and the vision that you have to even put this together is so commendable, and we really need to get behind it and show you the support that you need. Thank you all for your work. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Well said, DaQuan Lawrence. How inspirational. You are our future. We love you. Thank you. And this one is from Cheryl. Thank you for honoring the mothers. Cheryl says, thank you for, no, I think that's an old one. Another comment here. Awesome. You must be able to tell your story. There was another comment here earlier that I wanted to, Mark says, great program by all standards. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us this evening. Sheila Brown says Dr. Vicky is speaking, and looks like we had another comment here. Okay, now if I'm not able to get to your comments, Cecilia says, great show, guys. Thank you all for what you're doing. Basically, I think that's what he's trying to say. And then Anyanwu Cox says, excellent. Okay, so that said, well, our show was it's 3 minutes to wrap up the conversation. 815-277-5047. Anybody wants to call and share their opinion or basically encouraged our guests this evening, please go ahead and do so. 815-277-5047. We would like to take this short time left to get our closing remarks from our guest. This is just the beginning, and we'll be hosting you guys again to keep the conversation going. And so please go ahead. I will start from Sheldon, and then we'll end with DaQuan. Sheldon, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, Senna, thank you for having us. As DaQuan said, it's about global liberation for all of our people. I think it's important that we work together as people of African ancestry, and this forum provides that venue for us to do that. It's wonderful that the Shabazz Center, Movement for Black Lives, and other organizations, Africa Rising, EDFU Foundation, my own, Reverend Dr. Angelique Walker, put together two great bookends. Like as Vicky said, if you come to New York for a Black event and you don't go visit Harlem, then why are you in New York? So to be at the Audubon Ballroom, which is now the Shabazz Center, with a great program, with a documentary on showing how Black people are connected throughout the diaspora and the continent by Dr. Sheila Walker. And closing it out with Dr. Julius Garvey, as well as Dr. Marie Fanon at the Dwyer Center. We're really looking forward to presenting a great week of events. And we look forward to seeing you all there. Please don't forget to register. Go to the Google Permanent Forum for People of African Descent second session. And the UN is very much a stickler for making sure you're registered if you would like to come in and attend this event. It is open to all, but you do need to register. So please go and do that and support the work that we do. You can find, I put the links for our great hosts to proliferate to our working group charter and to join in the work that we're doing. And again, thank you to Vicky, to Cheryl, DaQuan, the youth, and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have a last-minute caller. Please tell us your name and why you're calling, sir.
My name is Emmanuel. Thank you for picking my call. I just wanted to throw a little question out there for.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Ima is already. Yes.
Yeah.
You're. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to throw a little question out there for everybody. I see who is going to answer my question. Chanel made a suggestion about white supremacy and how difficult it is to go into programs with this. With the United Nations. So I'm trying to ask a question. I've been thinking about this. Our African leaders, not even just the African leaders, though, but every country that involves Black people, our leaders go to United Nations, and you can see at the United Nations they don't have a voice. It's like their voice is always put at the back over issues, global issues that's concerning the world. And it's always these superpower countries that always bring the point and always make this great ideas that the whole globe should follow. But here in Africa, they exploit Africa. Take a lot of minerals and stuff out here. And look at how Africa is today, and Black people, the Black race is today. It's like we suffering, and our culture and tribes and everything is always the last. But we the one with all the mineral resources that runs the world. So since our leaders having the same problems where they cannot speak when they come to the United Nations.
Yes. Hello.
I think he was asking. I think he was asking if African leaders have the same issue when it comes to having their voices heard there.
Hello. Can you hear us, Emmanuel? Okay. Unfortunately, we lost. Okay. It's unfortunate, but he was making a very great point.
Just mention something very quickly. I know we're short on time, but I certainly I won't be answering his question directly, but and hear from people, why are you going to the UN? Like human rights, nobody cares about human rights, or nobody respects it, or what have you. And one of the most important things for me and others that I work with is that we connect with each other, right? We are informing and educating and brainstorming and lifting together. We absolutely have seen human rights solutions that have been devised by directly impacted peoples being brought back home to your local community, your school, your church, your fraternity, your sorority, your business, what have you, your municipality. And we applied those human rights principles and solutions there.
Okay.
So
and just to back her up, just like your commercial you had, Senna, about Africans becoming citizens, become a public official. We always encourage civic engagement. That's there's many strategies to accomplish our goal. And so to not utilize it, one of them is to not utilize any of them, right? So we definitely encourage civic engagement, and this is our foot in the door to increase our mandate and get more teeth, and possibly even bolster and help those African countries who don't have that voice, because we're there to support them.
Okay. I think that we lost another call and they sent a message, but let's see if I can read it. Let's see if I can read their message. Okay. All right. I wasn't looking at that one. Okay. Sorry. We there was a call coming through. They sent us a message, but I haven't been able to pull it up. But hopefully next time we open the phone lines a bit early so we can get some of these calls coming through. And Emmanuel, sorry for that. Sorry for not being able to get your comments and all your questions out clearly. We apologize for the technical challenges, but keep keeping the comments coming in, and we are encouraging you to stay connected, because we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. and every Sunday at 4. So whatever you're not able to get out today, if you wanted to call next week, you should be able to get through. Even this coming Sunday, we'll be here as well. And so we were getting our last comment, right? We're getting our closing remarks. And Sheldon, you got yours. And Shirley, please, quickly.
Yes. So thank you so much for hosting us today. Thank you for giving us this platform so we're able to share this information out. And I just encourage everybody who's on here to please share it out with their friends in their community. It's really important that we all come together. And I think it's really healing and lovely to have us all together and to have a space that's just for us.
Absolutely.
So I'd be so happy to see you all there. And please, like Sheldon said, please make sure you register, because the UN is a stickler for protocol. And please donate to our organization to help us with our endeavors, because we are a grassroots organization. So we're not funded. We are being funded by, you know, the people on the ground. So anything that you can donate to help is great. And if nothing else, then, you know, just your presence there is really helpful and is really wanted. So we look forward to that. And also, if you can't make it to New York, there will be programs that are online that you can join and be a part of. So thank you once again. And thank you, Chanel and Senna. It was really lovely to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Vicky.
Thank you so much again, Chanel and Senna. I wanted to echo that you do not have to travel to New York City if you, but you still would have to register through Indico. So definitely follow up on the information, do the registration. If you want to stay in touch with us, please, if you would give the host permission, just share your email address with them and they can help follow up with us. If you would think about International Working Group or Permit Forum. So our Gmail is iwg.pfpad, PFPAD at gmail.com. iwg.pfpad at gmail.com. We can add you to the list for continuing updates. And we just look forward to building together. Thank you so much. If you do donate, know that most of this is for helping with offsetting some of the travel, especially for youth and elders. It's, as you can see, a very intergenerational, interdisciplinary, and global group, and also to help provide funding, especially this session, for a special health space where people can get resources and have a meditation space, kind of time to be away. So we're there for each other, as we said, not just for the UN.
Awesome. Thank you so much. DaQUan.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Sina, for the opportunity. Again, thank you to my colleagues for allowing me to join the International Civil Society Working Group. And I would just say, again, trying to, coalesce what was already said. And again, using myself as an example, I wouldn't have been able to be a part of this group. I wouldn't have been able to go to United Nations in Geneva. And, again, I wouldn't be here talking to you in general if it wasn't for the people that poured into me. And again, that happens even as a man. So I think that I would just like us to all hold the mirrors up to ourselves and look at ourselves and know that we are the answer and the answers are within us. And again, we don't have to, be a billionaire. You don't have to have a college degree to know what you're talking about when it comes to helping Black people. Again, I would just like to, the audience watching and whoever's, interested in Black liberation should just connect with the people who are around you, and again, if they're doing things that you like, again, you talking about Chicago, we talk about New York, this, North America, and as we consider it, Babylon, we all need to be integrated. I just had the privilege of attending the State of the Black World 5 conference hosted by the International Institute of the Black World and Dr. Daniels. And again, as you see, Senna, this is an intergenerational movement. And again, like I keep calling out my age for a reason, not because I'm the one or I'm special. It's because, again, one day I will be older if I'm blessed to have longevity. My daughter's going to be a woman. And again, we're all connected. So again, connect with the youth, connect with the people in your communities, and recognize that because we have things like this, which they actually happen to get from Africa with cobalt and coltan, but that's a whole other story. But because we have things like this and where, we have this digital technology, there's no reason why we can't connect over time and space. And more importantly, just like the 60s and the 50s and before, we need to be greeting each other in our community. So stop walking by each other and stop doing senseless stuff or thinking that we're better than each other or we're not connected just because we have privilege or degrees, because that's only creating 6 degrees of separation. So that's me getting poetic for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DaQUan. We really appreciate it. Chanel, you want to give us a closing remark?
It's been a great show. I appreciate everybody and all the work that you guys are doing. It's awesome.
Thank you. We want to thank all our audience for chiming in this evening. Again, due to technical challenges, we have not been able to get some of the components of the show out the way we want it, but we really appreciate your time. For those whose name I have not been able to mention or comments I have not been able to read, please pardon us. Thanks. We want to thank our callers. William K. Crosby was also here. Rebecca Mode was here earlier. Cy Ghana Wimberley, you're also on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Cy. And then Underground Bookstore. Underground Bookstore. I wish I knew your real name. D Jones was also here, followed us and contributed to the show. Want to thank everyone, and also want to remind you all that this year, June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, especially, we are going to have the 3rd annual exchange ceremony. Last year, a king was Jesse Jackson was crowned as king of the African diaspora. We're continuing the restoration of the royalty of the African American, and we're bringing the same king, Togbi Nyahuta Maklo from Volta region. He's coming with 3 or 4 other kings to embark on the journey to the United States to restore the royalty of the African American. And so join us in Chicago at the exchange ceremony. You can go on our website, theexchangeceremony.com, and learn more about it. This year is going to be epic. We're going to be crowning 1 king and 2 queens. We are also going to be restoring other royalties. And so this is the time that the African diaspora come together in exchange of our culture, acknowledging that we have the same heritage. Our commonality is in our culture, and we have to come to heal and celebrate each other. So June 24th, mark it on your calendar. June 24th in Chicago, the exchange ceremony is going to be epic, and we're inviting you all. That said, we want to thank everyone again for being part of this show. This has been a wonderful conversation. I have learned a lot, and I hope that you have as well. This coming Sunday, 4 p.m., we'll be here to serve you as a community. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. And I'm the host, Senna, aka Alinko, and was joined humbly by my co-host Chanel and our great guests who have helped make a wonderful conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful evening. FABRE, SHERLY, Sheldon, DaQUAN, Vicky, we will see you guys shortly. We wish you the best in everything, and we'll be supporting you from here. Okay, have a wonderful
evening. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Good evening.
Peace.